This is Ari Koretsky, and welcome to Jews You Should Know, introducing the broader community to interesting and inspiring Jewish men and women making a difference in our world. Some are already famous, some not yet so, but each is a Jew you should know.
We are back with another wonderful episode of Jews You Should Know. Lately, my wife and I have been doing a lot of budgeting and talking a lot about different financial issues. My wife has gotten very into Rabbi Dave Ramsey. I don't think he's a rabbi, but he's definitely a very religious and pro-religion person, but he's also very fiscally conservative and very into budgeting and saving and so forth for those who are familiar. Well, we have on today, perhaps we can call him the Jewish Dave Ramsey. He doesn't have his own radio show, but he is definitely a major advocate for responsible financial living. Shmuli Margulies founded Mesila a number of years ago, and he provides financial education to children and adults, families all over the world through a wide variety of services and programs. He comes from a very, very interesting family. His father was a survivor and of Hasidic origin who made a great deal of money running a public company and was a phenomenal philanthropist, incredibly generous person known throughout the Jewish world. And Shmuli grew up with many siblings, one of 11, all of whom are engaged in various pursuits around the world. And he himself felt a tremendous responsibility to help people understand how to manage their money so that their money is not managing them, how to live with peace of mind, with serenity, and not to be burdened constantly by the possible debilitating stresses of financial difficulty. Once again, a reminder to subscribe either at Apple Podcasts or wherever else you are listening to this episode, and to please spread the word. Follow us on Instagram at Jews You Should Know, spelled out fully. Facebook is the same. And on Twitter, Jews You Should Know with the letter U. And now, to my conversation with Mesila founder Shmuli Margulies. And we are here with Shmuli Margulies, the founder and director of Mesila, an organization helping families navigate personal and business finance, and really remarkable organization that is spread all over the world. How are you, Shmuli?
Thank you, Rabbi. Wonderful. I'm here actually in England right now for a family wedding, and in touch with Mesila UK, of course. And just because I can't get away from all that, but enjoying and happy to be with you here today.
Wonderful. So that means you're not actually living in England, it sounds like, although your accent does sound British. So where do you actually live?
I grew up in London, England, and then before I married, I went to study in yeshiva in Jerusalem, and I've been there since. I had no intention of staying there, but Baruch Hashem, with the development of the years, I think it's a sign of the mission that I felt, and Baruch Hashem, we're still there and still working hard, and feel privileged and happy to be there.
Jerusalem has a way of really drawing you in and keeping you in once you're there.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
So
I'm one of 11 children, 11 siblings, and my wife is one of 7, and we're the only ones there.
You're the only ones there. So
and
now is everyone else in London? Where is everyone from?
My siblings are in London, in New York, and my wife's siblings are all in New York. And we view ourselves to an extent as survivors, because we also planned to come just for a year or two and go back. But there was some kind of mission which kept us there, and we're happy and delighted to have family and married children, all living in Israel, very privileged, and delighted to be there.
Beautiful. So now tell me a little bit about your upbringing. You, as you said, you grew up in London. What was that childhood like before you got to
Okay,
Israel?
sure. My late father was a very well-known entrepreneur and philanthropist. He was chief executive of a very large public company in the UK. I am the 10th of the 11 children. So when growing up, I was born into my father's prime years. He was leading a very large public company and charitable activities. There were rabbis from around the world, regular visitors in the home. That's the home that I was born into. No, really legendary. My father was a very, very well known. He was known by rabbis from US, Israel, UK, of course, and there was a bustling home.
Was he himself
I,
British in origin, or was he a survivor? What was his background?
he was born in Poland, but he came as 3 years old, and he served in the Royal Navy during the war. And he went straight into the world of commerce, and he was very well known in the UK, but not just in the UK. I know that when he was a very well known commodity dealer, and he did a lot in coffee and in cocoa, and he was known in the world of commerce as Marg, M-A-R-G, as the first four letters of his family name. And so they called his Marg there. Anyway, he once came to the US, and the heads of Mars came to receive him, and they created for him full size of a human, a Marg bar. So the mother. So that there was, and he was very, very well known. Cadbury and Mars, all the big commodity companies knew him. And there's an very interesting thing. There was a cocoa dinner, an annual cocoa dinner in London.
Sounds delicious.
And I don't know if they gave cocoa, but it was an annual cocoa dinner where all the traders from around the world came. And it was every year on Friday night. That's when the dinner was. Now, my late father was a religious Jew. His father was actually a Hasidic rabbi who came from Poland and had a shul, did wonderful things in London. But he never had that upbringing. He didn't look like a Hasidic rabbi at all. He didn't have a beard. He was very well known in the world of commerce. But obviously, a dinner on Friday night wasn't something that he could attend. So what did he do? Everybody was coming to London anyway. So he made every year dinner on Thursday night, the night before the cocoa dinner. Was called Marg's dinner. And everybody said that Marg's dinner was always better than the cocoa dinner. So they all came, and he took a hall, exactly the same, it was like people came for both events. And my father obviously never attended the Friday night dinner. And so he proclaimed, the whole world knew that my father's a religious Jew, keeping the Sabbath, and a tremendous Kiddush Hashem, tremendous, everybody, all the non-Jews knew that this is a special night, Friday night he can't come, and therefore there's a dinner on Thursday night. The interesting thing is that one of my father's disciples, or whatever it is, after my father passed away, I think even still today, makes a dinner on Thursday night. He's a non-Jew.
The Marg memory dinner.
I don't know if they still speak about him. I don't know if they even know where the origin is from. But still, many, many years later, there's still another dinner on Thursday night, the night before the cocoa dinner. That's an interesting story about my father.
Did your father want all of his children or some of his children to go into his business? And was that part of the upbringing?
No, absolutely not. Not just that. When some of them thinking of cutting their beards or anything, he objected. In other words, he was brought up during the war where he lacked the proper environment to go in his father's ways. So he didn't, but he wanted his children to be more similar to his father than to their father.
Interesting.
So although my siblings are, a number of them are in business, but they all have beards and all wear Hasidic garb, unlike our father.
So
And he was very proud of that.
What was he? What about his childhood made him miss that education? Was it because it was during the war years, or it was before then?
It was before, but there was no infrastructure for religious institutions. In London, it was a desert. He went to a non-Jewish school, and although his father was a Hasidic rabbi, his father was very soft. And in those days, it was a question of losing your children. So they went. None of his children looked the way he did, and it was just different times. My father never went to yeshiva. So he went to non-Jewish school and then into the Navy. So it was a whole different upbringing, and he went a different direction. When he was young, he was like dreaming to become the Lord Mayor of London. Those were his aspirations, and he went. And even before he was married, he was a successful businessman.
So what were some of the major causes that he was invested in? You said he was a major philanthropist all over the world. What were some of the signature causes?
There was virtually nowhere that he didn't invest in. What I remember was to do with America was that he once came for an MTJ dinner where they declared Ramosha Feinstein as the Good Lador, as the giant of the generation. They called my father came to, was honored or whatever it is at that dinner in America. So I'm saying, wow. Even causes in America. I remember Shmuli Margulies from Lakewood came to London. I still remember it clearly, but this I don't remember. I was too young, but they told me that my father asked him, "How much are you expecting to raise here in London?" So he told him an amount, and my father said, "You can rest assured that he guaranteed him the amount, and that already took a tremendous burden off him." But he went and collected, and I think my father didn't have to give that much, but it was his children know that my father did unbelievable things, even for Reb Shmuli Margulies. And then there was Reb Israel Tauber from Monsey, Tauber.
Sure, he passed away recently.
So my father at one point was a tremendous support of him in the early days. And then really everywhere. There wasn't anybody that he was close with many one of the leading rabbis of the generation. They all knew him. Even I remember going with him to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and many others. Today is the youth out of the Klosenberger Rebbe, and he was very close with him. Very special relationship.
Incredible. Have any of your siblings followed suit in terms of a philanthropic career, so to speak?
Not really. We're 11 of us.
Right.
So he was very special, very unique, but each one took just an 11th of his characteristics. So I can't say on anybody. Although all his children are involved in chesed in a big way, or almost all, and some of them are very well known and unique in what they do, but nobody can we say that is exactly like he was.
Incredible.
In other words, I have a brother in London who helps people raise money in an incredible way. That wasn't my father. He didn't do that. He gave of his own. But none of them really have the ability to.
You can have the desire, but you also need the capacity.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So,
although he did beyond his capacity. So he had the desire, and it consumed him, and he didn't think about the capacity. So we'll see. We'll look at that later. It's a little bit not Mesila like.
Right. Exactly. So you ended up going to Israel and studying, I guess, in yeshivas there and religious schools and staying. It sounds like, I guess, at some point you met your wife there, and she was American.
I didn't meet my wife in Israel. I met my wife in New York, and we married in New York. And both of us planned to come for a short period, a temporary period of a year, 2, 3, and that's it. And
here you are.
That's right. Here we are. There was something else in plan for us, and we're delighted that it turned out this way.
Well, what brought you to New York to meet your wife? Is that why you went to New York?
Correct. Yeah. Actually, one of my brothers was friendly with my wife's brother, and that's how we got to meet.
Beautiful, beautiful. So now, take me to the story of Mesila, of how this all came about. I guess you were just a regular student in a yeshiva in Israel, married, studying, doing the regular studying thing. What ended up developing for you?
Actually, not quite.
Okay.
At a pretty young age, I said my father was an entrepreneur, and I was born as a young child, I heard ideas of public company and stocks and takeovers and mergers and acquisitions. All these things were things that I was brought up with. And at some point, a few years after I married, I started investing a little bit here and there, part-time. And I was doing quite well. And I was young. I was like 29, not like that. I was 29 when my father passed away. And it was in the year of my father's passing that old friend of mine, who I knew back from England, came to me actually to invest in something that he had started. And I trusted him a lot, and I was happy to invest. And at that time, I had no intention of being involved. I was busy with my business and my learning. And over time, I invested substantial amounts of money. There's one episode which I want to tell you about, that I was at home. I don't remember if I was learning, but somebody came into me and said that he was collecting. I said, tell me a little bit, what do you do? He said, he's a sofer, he's a scribe. And he had something which took him into debt, and he has $20,000 of debt. And he's so busy servicing the debt that he doesn't have the peace of mind to write, and he virtually doesn't earn anything, and he doesn't have money to put food on the table. So I said, if you found somebody to lend you $20,000 and let you pay over time, what would the result be? He said, not just would I be able to feed my family with dignity, I will be able to repay the debt over time as well. I said, so why don't you find that loan? He said, it just doesn't exist. And I said, this has to change, because I said to him at the time, I see that you're a Yirei Shamayim, I see that you're God-fearing, I see that you could be a quality scribe, which would be popular, there'd be demand, and you could really earn a living. So this was, like, to me, a no-brainer. Healthy person, capable person, has earning potential, yet his circumstances have taken away that ability from him. And I think it's incumbent upon us to give that opportunity back to him. And when I heard his story and I put it together with this other guy who came and told me about his concept, I said, this is just too good to be true. And I said then, and I continue to say now, that we have to make this opportunity available to people everywhere. Where with a little push, with some guidance, whatever it is, we'll talk about how it evolved, give people an opportunity to get back on their feet, to lead a healthy, productive life where they contribute to society rather than being a toll from society.
Incredible. So you had this encounter with this person, and you had kind of this light bulb moment.
Correct.
What did you do with it?
So initially, I still had no intention of being involved. Again, as I said, I was busy with my business and with my learning. And I just came back to this guy who approached me, who I trusted greatly, because I knew him from back from England. And I gave him money. I was doing well in my business activities, and I gave him money. And he started telling me the story of which family he's investing in and what the circumstances are. And he reminds me now that I said to him, don't tell me the details, give me the amount. Because I trust you, you're doing a thorough job, and that's what he is. He's English, does a real thorough job. And at that time, he was lending people money to cover all their debt, going through their income and expenses to understand that they've got a surplus, or they could potentially have a surplus. And over time, then repay us when they make a commitment not to take out any loans during this time, during this whole period. That was the concept initially. And then it evolved over the years. Two things happened. Slowly, I got more and more involved, because this person who did it in the beginning had it all in his little notebook. And I felt with my business background that there's a better way of doing this. In addition, he was busy earning a living, and he couldn't apply himself totally to it. So slowly, I got more and more involved. He got less and less involved. And we started making it more and more business-like, recording things properly and doing it properly. And then over the years, we saw that people came for the money rather than for the education or the guidance. They said, yeah, we're listening to the guidance, but they weren't really listening to the guidance. They were just waiting for the check.
Right.
And ultimately, I'm saying it in a few minutes, but it was really years and new understanding, new insight. We felt it was two things really. It was also the Gemach industry, the free loan society industry developed and increased. Whereas when it started, you couldn't get a loan for more than $1,000 or $2,000. It became $5,000, then it became $10,000. The availability of having that kind of loan was much more available. In addition, I felt that we were losing the opportunity to actually give the guidance, and we slowly moved out of giving loans altogether. And people said to us, stop giving loans. Who's going to come to you? Who needs your guidance? No one wants your guidance. If you don't have some bait to draw them in, no one's going to come. And it turned out completely different. And not just that, but one of our activists stepped out and opened his own organization. That actually wasn't then. It was when, at a later stage, we said not just we're not giving loans and not just we're giving only guidance, we're actually going to charge for the guidance. And there was also a lot of reasoning behind that. And a good part was that we felt that people had to make a commitment to actually buy into the process. And at that point, there was one of our main activists who said, I don't believe in taking money from people. These are people who are having a hard time. Don't take more money from them. And he went and opened up his own activity, and he's helping people. And I wish him a lot of hatzlacha. I think he does good work, and he should continue to do good work. I still believe that the best way is to charge people. We can give them a scholarship here and there, but as soon as people pay for something, they suddenly are motivated and going to do what they can to make it work, to get them a return on their investment.
Oh. So you, as you said, you moved away from the loan industry, so to speak, and into a advisory kind of approach where you were basically helping people navigate finances, I guess, and learn how to live healthier financial lives.
We give coaching and we give general principles. We teach people general principles, but we don't actually advise, just because we don't believe that it's a good approach. It's a lot of coaching. It's a lot of motivating and helping people find the way rather than actually advising them. And often the client says to us, yeah, but I came to you, so you tell me what to do. And we say, no, you came to us for us to ask you what you think you should do. So that's a very important thing. But yes, we did. We moved out of giving people loans, and then eventually we started charging people, and we continue to charge people, and we're charging more and more over time. Again, it's revolutionary, the whole process of, you're a chesed organization, you're helping people, and here you are charging them. But slowly, I think the world's changed as well, where in our parents' times, when somebody had money, they didn't need any help. Nowadays, there are people who have money, who are earning money, nevertheless can't make it and need help navigating their finances, regardless of how much they're earning. Therefore, again, there's much more justification to charge people for the service, and we feel that people get a great return, and it works a lot better that way.
So what exactly has the organization become, and what have been some of the services that you are offering?
Right. First thing that I would say, and that I always say this, that I view Mesila as a movement rather than an organization. And I say, what's the difference between a movement and an organization? A movement is a train of thought, is an idea that we promote. That's called a movement. So here, the same thing. The fact that we do something, that's more like an organization. But a movement is because we believe in a way of life, in a train of thought, in certain principles that are basic principles. They're all Torah-based. But nevertheless, they say that common sense is not so common nowadays. So we strongly and continuously promote the common sense that people need to be on top of their finances and manage their finances rather than be managed by their finances, which most people are. And we do it in many different ways. But basically, we've got the Mesila way, where we encourage and we promote people to be aware of their finances, be on top of their finances, and manage them so that they serve their interests rather than draw them away from their interests. We empower people, and that's just a general overview. But in actual practice, what we do is we have education and we have coaching. And the education is in schools, teenagers, young couples, chosn and kala, before they get married, as soon as after they get married. And then there's adult education as well. Some people who are married already a long time, mid-age, whatever age, and they still need education. So obviously, the older they are, it's more difficult to educate. But nevertheless, when we show people there's a benefit and we can improve your quality of life, people are thirsty, and people are looking for a better way, because they know that the way without Mesila is unpleasant and causes stress and many other things that come along with that.
What are some of the main principles you said that you try to impart?
So I suppose it's different between children and adults. When we speak to children, we don't want to burden them with, what does it mean to manage a home and family finances, because they're still young and probably won't appreciate those concepts. And we also don't want to prematurely have them worry about how they're going to marry off their children, wherever it is, before it's necessary. So for children, we talk about understanding the value of money and to appreciate when their parents give them something, to understand the value, and to understand when their parents don't give them something, what does the parent mean? The parent has a budget, they have to make choices, and it's whenever you say yes to one thing, you're really saying no to something else. And to understand peer pressure, we teach children not just not to be impressed by peer pressure, not to be negatively impacted, but to actually be a positive peer pressure on their friends, and to show their friends and to be happy, although they're not getting everything, but to take pride in what they do have, and to take care of things, and to understand advertising, to understand how to defend yourself from the world of advertising. And we give children different examples, and we help them understand brand names and not brand names. All these are things that if taught cleverly to children, they can relate to it. I'll give you just one example where we show children, they're going to an amusement park, and they have 3 hours to be in the amusement park, and there's a whole bunch of rides. It says in a table, what's the waiting time for the ride and how long the ride takes. And the children have to choose which rides they're going to go on, because they can't go in 3 hours on all the rides. So some of the more popular rides have a long waiting time and a short ride time. So we tell the children, if you really want that, like everyone else, go for it. Wait the time. But if you don't, just because everyone else doing it is not a good idea, because you're losing a lot of time on the waiting. It's only a short ride. So we teach a lot of concepts to the children by talking about the amusement park. The children wake up, the children hear, give them different examples. Suddenly they're all alive. We're teaching them concepts of thinking ahead, planning your time, where the time is the commodity rather than talking about money. And also to look at what you want rather than what your friends want, so that it serves you best, so that you can be most productive in how you're using your time. That's an example of messages that are taught to children, so that they can learn to appreciate and be responsible and be smart about it, rather than following the herd, following everybody else. And we spoke about advertising and a bit of peer pressure and appreciating their parents, not just not being pressure on their parents, but to tell the parents, no, it's okay, we can manage, we're happy with what we have, etc., etc. To try and bring the parents' position close and the children's position not to be in conflict, but to help be on the side of the parents.
And what about for adults?
And for adults, we already talk, more about the family finances, and to encourage people to, like we said before, to have their finances contribute to their well-being, their peace of mind, to allow them to focus on what's really important to them in life, rather than being busy, how to cover this check or that check and how to pay their bills. And then we all know that main source of marital strife is financial stress. Chazal talk about it. Everybody knows that. And so again, if you'll be on top of your finances, you'll manage them the way that they should be managed. Your home will be more harmony, be able to focus on your children and other things that are more important to you. And that's just the motivation to actually give it your attention. But most of us, when there's things that cause us stress, we tend to ignore it, push it away, roll the can down the hill, or whatever it is, just to not focus on it. And we come in and we say, we'll help you. And we've seen people in worse situations. That's actually more in the coaching itself. But in education, we teach people, first of all, the motivation and the reasons why we think you should focus and give it time and attention, and you'll see that it is manageable. And we teach them how to relate to the children. What do you answer when your child comes and says, everyone has it and I need it and this and that? There are smart ways of dealing with requests from children like that. And then we teach people the plain and simple building a budget, how to do it in a that it shouldn't be too stressful, and to plan for the future, to short-term saving, long-term saving. Again, more of the reasons to do it and how to do things like that, rather than giving them a whole, in America and everywhere, financial literacy, normal people refer to as what does insurance mean and what the taxes mean. All those technical things we don't address. What we do address is understanding what the temptations are and why it's worth focusing on it, and how do you do it? How do you go about building a budget, living by a budget, together with your wife, periodically, meetings, discuss. And one of the examples are that rather than I decide or you decide. None of us decide. It's the budget that decides. And we meet at the beginning of the year. We decide what's in the budget, take everything into account, my needs, your needs, and then the budget decides. So it's healthier for everybody, better for everybody. And we teach people a little bit about what the dangers of debt are and how destructive they can be and how you can fall into it without being fully aware. Some mistakes that people make, many different examples of, doesn't have to be you're dumb or doing anything wrong. A lot of smart, clever, professional people also need help with this because this is something that's not taught almost anywhere.
So now you do get into the nitty gritty with people, right, on more of a personal coaching basis.
Right. So I said that we spoke about education, and now we speak about coaching, where we give people one-on-one with a couple, with a trained coach, to go through their finances. We have a very clear process. It's been proven many, many times over. Pretty remarkable. And everybody says if they're simply not covering, they're not earning enough, what are you going to do for them? But that's a great question. And it's not just a great question, but every couple that comes asks the same question. Not just the same question, they're convinced that they can't earn any more, they can't spend any less. Why are they convinced? Because if they could, they would have done it themselves. So what else can you do for us? And we say, with all due respect, you've done your best and you couldn't do any more. But the truth is that yes, you can earn more. And yes, you can spend less. And without it being stressful. And here they look at us and they say, okay, prove it. And they say, no, you're going to prove it. And we go through a very process, few months, and there is work. We're not saying that it's not work, but we are saying that we have to make sure it shouldn't be stressful or at least not more than a little bit of stress, because every change has an inherent some pain and some stress. But if you know and you appreciate what the goal is and what you're coming to, and the peace of mind and the control that you will be, and how much it will contribute to your quality of life, it makes it easier to go through and to make all very much worthwhile. And we have it happening all the time. The changes that people have brought about are simply phenomenal.
How did you develop this whole process? And are these all materials that you've developed? Have you worked with professional money managers? Like, how do you get all these, both the educational materials and the coaching process?
We always, what I think on our guiding principles, we talk about that we live by King Solomon's advice of Shua Berov Yoetz, how worthwhile it is to consult. And we always, over the years, consulted with professionals. I wouldn't use the word money managers because I think that's a different profession. We more consulted with psychologists and with educators rather than money managers. But over the years, all very well developed and always consulted and continue to consult all the time with professionals, yes.
So where are these educational and coaching services located? Because my understanding is they're kind of deployed worldwide. And how's that network sort of mushroomed?
A very good question. And not just as a good question, but from when you first contacted me until now, it's taken on a very serious change. And I'll email you something which talks about it. But basically, we were always hesitant to train coaches outside of where we have Mesila branches, because we believe that for the true impact of Mesila services to take place in the community, you need people on the ground who are there, who understand the local community, who can go in and deliver lectures and schools, wherever it is, to actually have the greatest impact. So we never wanted to train coaches outside of those jurisdictions. Recently, we started a course which we advertised, and we called it a dramatic change in our policy, where due to technology and other things, we feel like we can now, from the distance, manage, supervise, and deliver services anywhere, basically. And we have a course that started last week. Between 30 and 40 people from around the world that signed on, and many or numerous new communities and new locations where we had no presence before, and they've begun training. So that's really a tremendous development. Not just that, I myself, I'm a good friend of Rabbi Avi Kessel.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, actually, the truth is, I got confused. I thought I got confused with Ma'or and Olami. So
a lot of people get confused. Don't worry. It's all connected. We're all very close and connected.
I also know, maybe I told you, I know Rabbi Gershonfeld very well.
Oh, okay. I just spent Shabbat with him last week.
Really? Most special people. So I am a good friend of Avi Kessel, and I contacted him. I told him that I believe for Makarvim to understand and to be able to help people manage their finances and not just preach to them religion would be able to enhance their work greatly. I believe in that very strongly, and I contacted him. I told him to tell the people there in Olami.
Yes, he just forwarded us something, an email about it.
Right. So that was a result of my call to him. So we're planning to have this course, and then as soon as it finishes, to have another course. There'll be ongoing courses where we'll start training people, both who will act within Mesila and even without Mesila, to help people manage their finances. So I think we substantially broadened our reach in the last few days.
So these are places where you won't have necessarily educational centers, but you'll have coaches.
Right, but in the email, we also talk about how we're hoping that when people get the taste of what Mesila has to offer, people will see that it's making an impact, and they'll contact us to see how they can broaden that impact, and hopefully over time it will mushroom in the community rather than for us waiting to be a branch. We're jumping in and planting seeds that hopefully that will grow.
What does Mesila actually mean, and why did you choose that as the name?
Mesila means a path, but if you look at the Mefarshim, the different commentaries, different Rashi and the Malbim, I don't remember exactly who, but if you look at the difference between Mesila and Derech or Shvil and other words in Hebrew, is that Mesila is a well-trodden path, not just a path. And the reason why we think is that although Mesila is a relatively new organization, we're actually promoting concepts that our parents and grandparents knew and lived by and didn't need teaching. And these are challenges of contemporary situations and different forces of the modern world which require it being promoted. I always say that my age, I'm 51, and I feel like my parents' age, people thought teaching people to manage their finances, you need to tell people that you can't spend more than you have, or you need to tell people that it's worth saving. These are things that they knew and they understood as obvious, and they wouldn't understand why you need an organization or a movement for this. Whereas my children also, they can't understand, well, what do you mean? You should think before, and it's too foreign to them, all these things. Whereas I'm like in between, where I saw the way my parents and grandparents were careful and how they manage their finances, and I see how the generations have changed and how the savings rate has dived. These are things that are well documented, and suddenly the need for Mesila couldn't be greater.
Tell me just one or two maybe horror stories that you've encountered, people that in really, really dire straits, and then maybe one or two success stories where you've really seen a tremendous turnaround for a family or group of people.
hard for me. The horror stories include people losing their lives. I'm not
Aye.
talking about, absolutely, it's a killer. It's not an exaggeration at all. For sure, the marriage and other things and sickness, but even losing their lives. And that's the extent of financial stress where it gets people to.
Aye.
And success stories, we have so many. It's hard for me now to think of a specific one that would be the most suitable.
You do encounter people where they're in like dramatic debt and, really tremendous levels of difficulty, and they're able to climb out of it and move on.
Yeah, and in a remarkable way where you wouldn't have believed. I actually heard a few minutes of the training course that started last week, and somebody asked the situations where you feel that are beyond being able to help. The obvious question where people see, what are you going to do for this family? And the person who's training said, are there people that we can't help? Yes, there are people that we can't help. But when a coach meets somebody and he's not sure how to help, he has to speak to his supervisor and his supervisor to his supervisor. And if all of us decide that there's really nothing else to be done, then, only then, do we allow to express that maybe this is that family. But otherwise, every family who comes to us, and he said, you wouldn't believe the extent of what changes people have done to their lives as a result of the Mesila process. And therefore, whoever comes to us, however dire the straits are, we believe, we assume that they have the ability to change their situation, to climb out of it, not as quickly as they hope as they expect. It took years to dig the hole that they've got themselves into. So it's going to be a process, and it is going to take time, but we give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and it's not just wishful thinking. It's because we've seen tremendous changes that people have made, and that's why we believe that everybody can improve their situation, and not just improve, but significantly improve their situation.
What are some of your future goals? You said that you've recently expanded your reach to allow for coaching all over the world, and really trying to magnify the impact and broaden where you're connecting. Are there other programs you'd like to develop, other aspects of this whole process that you believe are still missing?
First thing is that we didn't speak much about the business division.
Please.
And those are activities that are only taking place in Israel as of now. And we have demand from our branches around the world, and that's something that needs to be developed. I think it's urgent, very, very needed. People have great concepts and great ideas, but are unaware of how to implement them and how to successfully run those businesses. That's one thing. And the other thing is, we are in many schools, but there's still many more schools that don't teach the Mesila curriculum. And we need to have the resources to be able to advertise properly and to develop more modern tools which are used in today's classrooms, all things that need to be developed. I think there's still many, many, many more things. Just as an example, we think that games or children's are powerful educational tools that could and should be done. Different books, and there are many, many things that we should and could do. And Mi'etzah Hashem, we're hoping to get there.
Incredible. What exactly, when you mentioned the business division, what exactly are you doing for businesses? Because that's much more complex.
True, but again, it's focused on basic principles, not a device. In other words, you've got specific challenges that are something to do with your industry or your specific circumstances, then you may need a business consultant. But we're here to teach people the basic principles that you think, he's running a business, he must know and absolutely not the case. So we teach people basic principles of business, and we also coach businesses. We do both those things very successfully in Israel, and soon we hope to be doing it in Mesila branches abroad as well.
Incredible. Well, it sounds like this is, as you mentioned, really potentially life-saving work in a sense, and certainly marriage saving and peace of mind saving. And people perhaps don't appreciate the degree to which financial challenges, insecurities, and concerns can destabilize a person or a family or a community. It sounds like the work that you're doing is allowing people to find that firm footing and to really live lives in peace, and where money is not the dominant theme of their lives, but is just sort of an underlying reality, but that they're able to actually live life.
We also talk about the impact to the community. If you could take 10% of people who need support from the community and make them into contributors to the community, it tips the scale in such a dramatic way that it can a huge impact.
Any parting words, Shmuli, and where can people learn about Mesila online if they want to avail themselves of the service, if they want to participate as service providers? Where can people learn more about this phenomenal organization and movement?
www.mesila.org. And there's wherever we're doing a lot of great work. We still feel like we're already doing a drop in the ocean. And absolutely, everybody's welcome. We need a lot of help. You're welcome to come and help, to join. We look forward to the opportunity to be able to help more and more people. But that's where you can find more, where you can get help or be of help. Both are things that we very much welcome, and we hope to see Mesila grow and to impact more and more people, to have more and more people enjoy the light of Mesila.
Shmuli Margulies, founder of Mesila, thank you so much for joining us.
Be well.
This has been Ari Koretsky on Jews You Should Know. Please visit us at JewsYouShouldKnow.com and subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume podcasts. Find us on social media at Jews You Should Know. If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Jews You Should Know. Finally, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review so that we can continue to grow and introduce many more people to Jews You Should Know.